Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. Here's Meatball. Look at her. Still kicking. Hey, Meatball. Today, I was going to comment. I mean, some of you, I think, I've been seeing some other people's live streams and stuff like that. And there's quite a few people that are shoutingly pissed at some of these SJWs, some of these OSR Wokists that had gone and done this itch.io game jam. First of all, they completely just ripped off the exact concept that Taylor Lane had come up with for the real OSR game jam that was tremendously successful, by the way. You might remember a couple of months ago, I was talking about this in the videos, telling people, you know, you could design your own OSR stuff, and you know, that it would be shared around, and it was like really big. It got, I think, like, what was it, like 30 or something entries of like really interesting stuff, including a source book for two source books for Star Adventure, and I think Dark Albion Adventure, Lion and Dragon Adventure. So really cool, and it was well worth checking out. But so now these guys, led by the degenerates at Monkey Paws Games, the groomers, the grooming gang over there, have ended up deciding to basically steal that same idea. And they did that, and they added in that people could post their previous products there. They could just ship those in there, right? So of course they're going to have a bigger result if you're doing that, because that's like nothing, right? Like if they said if Taylor had said, "Oh, put your previous products up," I could have had, all of the 106 issues of RPG Pundit Presents, right, in PDF form, available for that jam, and it would have been much more numbers, right? But the thing that they're really pissed off about is not the blatant ripoff of our very successful jam, but actually that they, in the description of the game jam, they had put in something that was basically attacking the real OSR. It was attacking. It claims that I am a white supremacist, which is absolutely bullshit for anyone who knows me. I mean, anybody who's watched any of these videos for enough time, right, will know that I am the opposite. They are the racial supremacists. They're the segregationists. Monkey Paw Games is full of people who believe in the essentiality of race, right? They believe that race is the most important factor, and that somebody can never possibly understand someone of a different race, and that race is the single defining force that should determine things like favor in public office or in grants or access to money or things like that, right? So they're the ones that are racists. They're directly racists. Yeah, Monkey Paw Games is a racist company. The people that run it are all a gang of racists. I believe that race has almost no importance. that the color of your skin doesn't matter. What matters is the content of your character. I'm on the side of Martin Luther King. They're basically presenting the same philosophy as Eichmann. They just happen to flip around which sports team they prefer. That's all. So that it's really stupid. They also claimed that Grim Jim was a rapist and that Venger Satanis was, I don't know, I don't remember what they even said about him, but they said something nasty about him too, right? And they did this in the description, right? So that's, I don't give a shit though, right? Because these guys, they don't actually make any traction. They've been trying now. And this is the thing, the whole point of something like this, and the whole point of them trying to subvert the OSR, they're claiming to be OSR, they're not. They denounced the OSR multiple times. They became part of Sword Ream when that was happening, right? You remember Sword Ream, the alternate name for people who are condemning and saying the OSR is dead, we have to leave the OSR forever, we'll make a new thing that is much more diverse and inclusive, and we'll call it Sword Dream. And Sword Ream very quickly disappeared. It produced nothing, right? Because none of these people produce anything. They're worthless. Their games have no traction whatsoever. They have no influence whatsoever. except for their ability to try to cancel and destroy, which is rapidly fading from them. They're losing now more battles than they win at that, and that's very good news for all of us. And they, of course, they recognize, as part of this larger movement to try to destroy RPGs, which is itself part of a much bigger movement to take down every facet of normative Western civilization, right? That's what they want to do. They want to take over the culture, deconstruct everything that is valued by the culture, and replace it, wearing a kind of very thin skin suit of what it originally was, with something that, in fact, promotes their fundamental philosophy that nothing is true and everything is permitted, right? That there is no such thing as objective truth, that everything is just about narrative, and that therefore the people who are the smartest and can craft the narrative have an inherent right to power, right? Ironically, fundamentally, the argument of the left today is an argument for all of their pretense about equality and human rights and things like that. Their fundamental philosophy comes from the postmodernists. It comes from Lacan, Derrida, and Foucault, right? And the combination of those make it very clear that there's no such thing as actual truth, right? There's no true anything. You can't know anything. All there is definitions, right? So whatever you say is true about an apple, let's say, the postmodernists will say, well, no, that's not true about the apple. They were all French, right? That is not true about the apple, they will say. That is your words about the apple, but you cannot know the apple. You cannot know if what you are seeing is even real. So if I create other words describing the apple, and I have more influence than you, then my narrative redefines reality over yours. So that's what they would do, right? And that's their perspective. And so their idea is basically that whoever are the smarty pants people, which they think is them, will get to control a society where there are no values, right? The thing that stops them, what they see as their barrier to power, is the strength of the traditional narrative of a society. They need to destroy society in order for their individual their little collective or order of power to be able to have enough effect, right? And it's basically the incompetence principle writ large, right? That it's the same as in RPGs. The reason that so many people who are mediocre game designers ended up joining stuff like the story games movement, and why so many, generally speaking, human mediocrities or less than mediocrities become SJWs, right? If you look at the numbers of Antifa, it's filled with, sex offenders, people that have been in and out of mental institutions, right? People that are hideously deformed. It's all the people that are just not, they're not well functioning in society in any way. The reason that they're in there is because they realize that their only shot at success, so to say, is not going to be by achieving something, because they recognize, at least subconsciously, that they lack the talent, ability, or discipline, or they just generally don't have the wherewithal to produce something that people are going to want, right? And so therefore they will never succeed by the standard way that normal human beings succeed. So their way is going to be to tear everything down so that the tower is no longer inaccessible. They can enter into the ruins of that tower, sit on top of it, and say, I'm the king, right? Except the problem with all that, and I don't know how this has suddenly turned into a whole big, lecture on the flaws of postmodernist philosophy, but let me just close by saying the flaw with all that is that society creates these boundaries that stop utter chaos, right? That stop anarchy. And if you tear down society, you don't get to then impose your own weaker narrative and suddenly everything will be the utopia that you dreamed of where you have absolute power. No, if you tear down all the things that stop the degeneration of the social values, then what will immediately replace that is not going to be the person with the best argument is the strongest. No, that'll mean the person with the gun is the strongest, right? Or the person that has the biggest knife is the strongest, right? The person that's most willing to cut other people's heads off is the strongest, right? So by trying to destroy society, these people think they're going to get what they want. They won't. What they're going to get is barbarism, and a barbarism where they'll probably be among the first victims of all of the thing that they have wrought. You know, that's the only consolation one can have at the thought of these guys having any chance of succeeding, is that if they do succeed, then they're going to be the first people eaten by the cannibals of the post-collapse society, right? Like, that's what's going to happen. But anyways, the thing is that they in gaming, at the level of gaming, they have recognized very quickly the danger that the OSR represents. And the proof of that is that they can't take it out, right? They took out Dungeons and Dragons, basically. They control Dungeons and Dragons right now, like the official Dungeons and Dragons, 5th edition, right? And you'd think that that would be victory, right? Except it isn't, because they have a lot of problems, right? But first of all, in the big scale control over Dungeons and Dragons has the problem that the gaming, that RPGs themselves are individualized activities or little groups, right? That they still can't, they can make the books, but they can't force you to play the books that way, right? And so they know that eventually people will just stop buying the books. But the bigger thing is that they can't stop people from playing the way that people want to play. That's the fundamental crisis. But then they could still try, in theory, to remove any other option for people to have access to the sort of games that they would want to have, and hope that the hobby will die on the vine, as it were, from a lack of nourishment, right? That they won't have the opportunities, people won't have the opportunities to get products, and small press is usually too insignificant, right? The OSR is their biggest obstacle. Why? Because the OSR produces products that are essentially Dungeons and Dragons, right? They're based on the D&D rules, and they're products that are part of a movement, so they have a coherence to it. They have a unity to them. People can make these products, like all of my products here. Sorry, Meeple, I'm done showing you off. The Old School Companion 2 and the adventures that are in there, they're made for Lion and Dragon in theory, but you could run them with any other fantasy-based OSR game. You could run them with Labyrinth Lord, let's say, right? Or Swords and Wizardry. Right? World of the Last Sun is a setting book. It was based on a campaign for Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's set up so you can play it with literally any OSR game, right? Lion and Dragon and Invisible College are OSR games, but they're games that you can pick and choose from stuff from there. Like maybe you're running Labyrinth Lord and you're happy with that, or Lamentations. But hey, you really like the leveling rules in Lion and Dragon. You like how the random rolls for advancement mean that all the character classes are going to end up looking different over time. Every individual character in a class is going to end up looking different over time. A 6th level fighter in Lion and Dragon, any 2 6th level fighters will end up looking like very different people with different abilities and benefits, right? In a way that doesn't require having to organize feat trees and shit like that, right? So, maybe you like that. And so you'll just take that and use that in Labyrinth, but you still use, let's say, the magic system, or maybe the other way around. You maybe Lion and Dragon's medieval authentic ritual-based magic system. Maybe you didn't really want to keep doing Vancian stuff. You could take all that out. You keep everything else. You keep everything in Labyrinth the way it is, but you replace the wizard magic with the rituals from Lion and Dragon, or you just port them on board, right? You add them as additional magical stuff that people can maybe get. So you can mix and match, right? This means that coherence exists there, and that it's providing an alternate product for people that like D&D. And that's a very big issue for them. So they've been trying to destroy it for a long time, but it's decentralized. The big issue is that unlike, say, the Forge, which was top down, or most other gaming was like story games was basic storytelling games were basically controlled by White Wolf, right? You could take over a company, you could take over a message board, you could take over a forum, you could take over a zine or whatever, and then suddenly you'd be in charge of that whole movement. That isn't there in the OSR. There is no single king of the OSR, there's no single pope of the OSR. There's just a bunch of different people that work together in a decentralized network. And that decentralized network is entirely based on merit, right? There are people that can't stand me or can't stand my politics, but will still buy my games because they're OSR gamers. They're not really Wokists, right? They're just OSR gamers. What they don't like, there's a lot of people in the OSR probably who are like that kind of middle of the road type of person that doesn't want any politics, right? But they're like, okay, well, the pundit, I don't like this. I'd never follow him on Twitter, right? I don't like the political stuff he posts. But, his games don't have that, and damn it, they're really good. And he sort of pisses me off sometimes, I'm going to buy this anyways, right? So, that creates an environment where they can't effectively shut down the movement. And they've tried so many times, In fact, every single time for the last, what would it be now? 10 years, let's say, that they have tried to cancel me in some form or another, the end result has always been the same. I end up having more followers, I make more money, and I become more successful, So this is why, unlike Grim Jim, who apparently did like a cease and desist order on Monkey Paw Games for having made that comment about him, obviously of him being a rape supporter, which is just bullshit, right? We all know that he's not. And it's good for him that he did that, they didn't really, itch.io didn't really end up, they didn't tell him get rid of all this. They didn't do anything about what they say about me there, but I don't care because everybody who would join that kind of jam is not a real gamer. They're not a real OSR gamer for sure. Maybe they're some kind of weirdo story gamer, right? That want to just subvert the OSR. They have no power there. So for them to say that, it's just them preaching to their own crowd of, the sex offender wing of the mental asylum or wherever they all come from, So that's not a problem to me. I don't give a shit, right? Because everybody who does know me, everybody who's listened to anything I've said knows that I'm not what they claim, And them attacking me only ends up getting people to buy more products. And this is why they're doomed to fail. They can't destabilize something like the OSR. They can't destabilize a decentralized network, And I think that there's a lesson to be seen there in terms of all of our other elements of culture. We have to create decentralized networks for other media. I know that there's some of that is being done already in video games and comic books and stuff like that. But we also need to start considering doing this in other areas, schools, like at the education system, right? Create a decentralized education system that just openly defies being part of the public education system and provides an alternative vessel that they cannot in any way control because there's no central board that they can subvert or something like that. You have to be able to create a means by which we have a resilience against takeover from these people that want to destroy you, Anyways, I guess that's everything for today. This video is a bit of a disjointed rant, but it let me get out of my head a little bit of my recent ponderings on the fundamental flaws of those of the postmodernist movement, and everything that it has wrought, and how lately I'm getting the feeling, in spite of maybe in part because of the disasters that we're seeing right now in our economy and the current government of the United States and all that sort of stuff, you would think that this would be like, oh well, this is like the worst, right? But actually, it seems to me that the pushback is going to be so much stronger now, right? Like people have finally they've finally woken up about wokeism and what it is capable of doing, and that it's not just about somebody's going to be banned from Twitter, so what, right? No. Wokeism is not that. Wokeism ends with the collapse of civilization, right? Wokeism ends because it's not about what they don't care about what pronoun you use, really. What they care about is destroying all definitions, right? Destroying everything that has that you can say this is truth, right? Or that, or at least this is a standard by which we operate, right? Both of those things, they despise them. And so now, once they started going for the public schools, that's, I think, where suddenly they're going to get a big pushback. But anyways, that's something to be talking about in a political live stream or something like that. If you like this video, please share it. Share it anywhere you think someone will find it interesting or will get pissed off about it. Why not? And if you want to support me, I mean, I've got a Patreon account and stuff like that. These guys always have Patreon accounts, right? I have one just in case because there are some people that don't actually... Some people who are fans of mine who don't actually buy RPGs, believe it or not. And some people who've bought all my RPGs. So if you're either of those people, then you can donate to my Patreon. And it's got like, I don't know, I get, I think, like $35 every month from the Patreon, which is wonderful. And I thank the people who've done that. And the funny thing is that you get like some of these people in the SJW circles that are like, the pundit's a loser. He only makes $35 off his Patreon. I make $100, right? I'm like, dude, I make literally multiple orders of magnitude there from my actual book sales, like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, right? I tell people not to go on Patreon because the thing you want to do if you're a gamer, if you don't have all my books yet, and you probably don't have Sword and Caravan, my newest book, so check out Sword and Caravan. It's already in a day it became a copper bestseller. In like 3 days it became a silver bestseller. It's been huge. Everybody's talking about how beautiful it is, which is nothing that I did. That's Mad Scribe Games, the publishers, but they're loving the content too. So be sure to check out Sword and Caravan, a complete campaign setting book that you can use. Again, it's OSR, right? You can use it in any OSR system. Obviously it's ideally for Lion and Dragon, but it's, there's not a lot of like fidgety mechanics that are specifically L&D mechanics in it. There's hardly any of that. Instead, what you have is a lot of random tables, a lot of like tables for designing locations and things like that. A lot of material, details on the setting. I'm going to do a whole video as soon as I get the books, which should be here pretty soon, I hope. So check out Sword and Caravan. Check out all my other books, and if you don't have a lot of money, check out my RPG Pundit Presents PDF series, 106 different issues. They're all $4.99 and less, right? Most of them are about $2.99. So it's like you're buying me a coffee. Well, not even these days. $2.99. I don't know what it buys these days, right? But it's like you're giving me a little tip, and you're getting something in return that you can use in your RPGs. That's the way we win, is by creating usable content, and we're doing it like crazy. So it's good stuff. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Horn plus Argento Natural.